Get out, you thug! You're here to steal from us! Linda Patterson's words cut through the cheerful graduation party like a knife. The 45-year-old white woman stepped aggressively into Marcus Washington's path by the gift table. Her phone captured every second for her Facebook live stream. Marcus stumbled backward, his Stanford graduation program falling beside the celebration cake. 22 years old, summa cum laude, Google offer letter in his pocket, branded a criminal at what should have been a joyful celebration. "Ma'am, I'm Jessica Henderson's friend. I just graduated Stanford." "Liar! You criminals are all the same. Always have some sob story ready," Linda shrieked, her voice drowning out the party music. "Police! We have a black male threatening us at our party." She turned to her camera with pure hatred. "See this, everyone? They even crash our private celebrations now." The festive atmosphere turned toxic. Marcus stood trapped among the balloons and decorations. Have you ever seen a racist's world completely collapse? The Meadowbrook Hills Community Center buzzed with celebration. Graduation banners hung between oak trees, their colors bright against the afternoon sun. Tables overflowed with congratulatory cards, gift boxes, and photos of smiling graduates in caps and gowns. This wasn't just any party. It was the neighborhood's annual tradition, honoring local kids who'd made it through college. Families had driven from across the city to celebrate their children's achievements. The air smelled of barbecue and fresh-cut grass. Marcus Washington adjusted his Stanford sweatshirt and checked his phone again. No response from his mother. She'd been working late every night this week, stuck in what she called critical city meetings. He missed her at his actual graduation ceremony, but she'd promised to make it up to him somehow. "Marcus! You made it." Jessica Henderson appeared beside him, her smile genuine and warm. At 22, she radiated the confidence that came with surviving 4 years of engineering school. Her parents had insisted she invite Marcus after hearing how he'd helped her through advanced calculus their junior year. "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus replied, handing her a small wrapped box. "Congratulations, gift. You earned it." Jessica's eyes lit up as she unwrapped a silver pen engraved with Jessica Henderson, Civil Engineer. "Marcus, this is beautiful. Mom and Dad are going to love meeting you properly." Around them, the party continued in full swing. Dr. Robert Henderson, Jessica's father, discussed graduate school options with other parents. Susan Henderson arranged gift displays with military precision. About 60 people mingled freely, mostly white families, but Marcus noticed several other students of color scattered throughout the crowd. He felt comfortable here. These were his people now. College graduates, future professionals, young adults ready to change the world. His Google offer letter sat folded in his back pocket, a reminder that he belonged in spaces like this. "There's someone I want you to avoid," Jessica whispered, nodding toward a woman near the punch bowl. "Linda Patterson. She lives 3 streets over and has opinions about everything. She started some drama with the Martinez family last month over their landscaping crew." Marcus followed her gaze. Linda Patterson stood with perfect posture, her blonde hair styled in sharp layers. She wore a cream blazer that screamed expensive, paired with pearl earrings that caught the sunlight. Her phone remained constantly in her hand, documenting every moment for her social media followers. "She runs this Facebook group called Meadowbrook Community Watch," Jessica continued. 2,000 members. She posts about suspicious activity constantly. Last week, she reported a delivery driver for loitering because he took 30 seconds to find the right house. Marcus nodded but didn't seem worried. He'd encountered people like Linda before, at Stanford, at internships, in job interviews. He'd learned to navigate their assumptions with grace and intelligence. Success was the best response to prejudice. "Don't worry about it," he told Jessica. "I'm just here to celebrate with friends." But Linda had already noticed him. She stood near the gift table, phone in hand, live streaming to her Facebook group. "Beautiful day here at our graduate celebration," she told her camera. "So proud of our neighborhood kids who worked hard and earned their success the right way." Her eyes landed on Marcus across the pavilion. She squinted, studying his face like she was trying to place him. When she couldn't, her expression hardened. In her worldview, unknown faces meant potential problems. Linda's live stream had 43 viewers, mostly neighbors who followed her daily updates about community happenings. She'd built a following by positioning herself as the neighborhood's unofficial security expert. Every suspicious car, every unfamiliar face, every safety concern got reported and discussed in her online echo chamber. "Hold on, everyone," she told her camera, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I'm seeing some unfamiliar faces here today." You know how I feel about maintaining our community standards. Marcus, oblivious to being watched, continued chatting with Jessica about their post-graduation plans. He mentioned his start date at Google, his excitement about moving to Silicon Valley, his gratitude for the opportunities ahead. "You're going to change the world," Jessica said with conviction. "Seriously, Marcus. You're the smartest person I know." Their conversation drew other graduates into their circle. Amanda Carter, bound for medical school, joined them. David Rodriguez, heading to law school, shook Marcus's hand warmly. Soon, a small group had formed around Marcus, drawn by his quiet charisma and genuine interest in their stories. This should have been a perfect moment. Young professionals celebrating achievement, planning futures, building networks. Instead, it triggered something ugly in Linda Patterson's worldview. She moved closer, phone still recording, positioning herself within earshot of their conversation. When Marcus mentioned his full scholarship to Stanford, she scoffed audibly. When he talked about his Google salary, she rolled her eyes for her camera. "Entitlement," she murmured to her live stream. "You can see it from a mile away. They think they deserve everything without earning it." Her viewers began commenting in real time. Some pushed back against her implications, but others encouraged her perspective. The echo chamber effect kicked in, amplifying her worst instincts. Marcus felt the shift in energy before he saw her approaching. Conversations around him quieted. Other graduates stepped back slightly, sensing trouble but unsure how to respond. Jessica's face paled as she recognized the look in Linda's eyes. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "maybe we should go inside and find my parents." But it was too late. Linda Patterson had made her decision. In her mind, she was protecting her community from an outsider who didn't belong. In reality, she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. She approached their group with purpose, phone held high, live stream now at 67 viewers and climbing. Her face wore the expression of someone absolutely convinced of their righteousness, the most dangerous kind of prejudice. Marcus turned as she approached, his expression open and friendly. He had no idea what was coming. Even after years of experiencing racism, he still believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. That generosity of spirit was about to be tested in the most public way possible. Linda stopped directly in front of him, close enough that her phone camera captured his face clearly. The rest of the party began to take notice. Conversations slowed, heads turned. Phones emerged from pockets as people sensed drama building. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. One word, one gesture, one choice would tip everything into chaos. Linda Patterson was about to make that choice. Linda Patterson stepped directly into Marcus's personal space, her phone camera inches from his face. The 67 viewers on her live stream suddenly became witnesses to what would unfold next. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the party chatter like a blade. "This isn't your kind of neighborhood." Marcus blinked, caught completely off guard. The friendly conversation with Jessica and their classmates died instantly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't understand." "Don't play dumb with me," Linda snapped, her voice rising so everyone within 30 feet could hear. "I know exactly what this is. You people always have some sob story ready." She turned her phone toward the growing crowd. "Watch this, everyone. This is how they operate now." Jessica stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Linda, stop it. This is my friend Marcus. He graduated from Stanford with me. I invited him. Linda's laugh was sharp and ugly. Oh, sweetie, you're too trusting. Look at him. Does he look like Stanford material to you? Her eyes swept Marcus from head to toe with obvious disgust. That sweatshirt is probably stolen. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He felt his face burn with humiliation as dozens of eyes turned toward him. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others pulled out their phones to record. No one spoke up in his defense. Ma'am, I can show you my diploma. Marcus reached toward his graduation case. Don't you dare reach for anything! Linda shrieked, stumbling backward dramatically. Everyone saw that! Everyone saw! He just reached for something. Probably a weapon. Her phone shook as she recorded, her live stream exploding with comments. Viewer count jumped to 150, then 200. Marcus raised both hands slowly, his Stanford training in conflict de-escalation kicking in. I was reaching for my diploma. I just graduated summa cum laude. I have a job offer from Google. I can prove— Liar! Linda's voice cracked with rage. You criminals are all the same. Always have some elaborate story prepared. She spun toward her camera, her face twisted with manufactured fear. This is exactly what I warned you all about. They're getting bolder, coming right into our private celebrations. The crowd pressed closer, a mix of curiosity and mob mentality taking hold. Marcus found himself surrounded by a sea of faces, some hostile, others merely entertained by the drama. Jessica tried to push through to reach him, but Linda blocked her path. Step away from him, honey, Linda commanded Jessica. You don't know what he's capable of. These people are dangerous when cornered. These people? Marcus's voice remained steady despite his racing heart. What exactly do you mean by these people, Mrs.? Don't you turn this around on me. Linda's finger jabbed toward his chest, stopping just short of touching him. I know your game. Play the victim card. Make me look like the bad guy. Well, it won't work this time. Her live stream had reached 350 viewers. Comments flooded in. Call the police. Get him out of there. Linda, you're so brave. But also, this is wrong. He seems nice. This is racist. Linda ignored the critical comments, feeding off the supportive ones. Someone call security. Call the police. We have an intruder who refuses to leave our private event. Marcus felt his phone buzz in his pocket. His mother, finally responding to his earlier texts about the party. But Linda's performance had reached fever pitch, and any movement might be interpreted as aggressive. I'm calling 911 right now, Linda announced to her camera. This black male has been harassing our families, intimidating our children, and when we asked him to leave peacefully, he became hostile and reached for what could have been a weapon. None of it was true. Every word was a fabrication. But Linda's phone was recording, and her version was being live-streamed to hundreds of people who were only seeing her perspective. Marcus stood frozen, trapped by the awful mathematics of the situation. Any movement would be suspicious. Any words would be aggressive. Any attempt to leave would be fleeing the scene. He was damned no matter what he did. Jessica finally broke through the crowd. This is insane! Marcus, show her your diploma! But Linda was already dialing 911, speaking in a trembling voice that portrayed her as a terrified victim. Yes, emergency services? I need police at Meadowbrook Hills Community Center immediately. We have a situation with a black male who's threatening our neighborhood families. The lie hung in the air like poison gas. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of centuries of false accusations settling on his shoulders. When he opened them, every phone in the crowd was pointed at him. Somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the afternoon air like warnings of doom. Marcus felt his phone buzz again. Another text from his mother. His hands trembled as he tried to read it without making sudden movements that Linda might weaponize. Mom, so sorry. stuck in an emergency budget meeting downtown. How's the party? His heart sank. She had no idea what was happening. He needed to text her back, but Linda was watching his every move like a hawk circling prey. 3 police cars pulled into the community center parking lot, their red and blue lights painting the celebration in ominous colors. The festive atmosphere evaporated instantly. Parents grabbed their children, pulling them back from the commotion. Graduate students who moments ago were discussing bright futures now scattered to safe distances. "Officers! Thank God you're here!" Linda rushed toward the approaching policeman, her phone still live-streaming to over 500 viewers. "I'm Linda Patterson. I called about the intruder." Sergeant Torres emerged from the lead car, followed by Officers Malik and Reynolds. Torres was a 20-year veteran who'd seen every kind of domestic disturbance imaginable. His eyes immediately scanned the scene. A well-dressed young black man standing calmly in the center of a crowd, surrounded by phones and cameras. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem?" Torres addressed Linda, who immediately launched into her performance. "Officers, this individual has been harassing our families for the past 20 minutes, she said, her voice shaking with manufactured terror. When we politely asked him to leave our private neighborhood event, he became increasingly aggressive and hostile. I have it all recorded." She waved her phone triumphantly. Officer Malik stepped forward, his expression neutral but alert. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." Marcus slowly reached for his wallet, moving deliberately to avoid any misinterpretation. "Of course, officer." He handed over his driver's license with steady hands, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Marcus Washington, age 22, Malik read aloud. He looked up at Marcus's face, then back at the ID. "You live at 1247 Oak Street?" "Yes, sir. With my grandmother while I transitioned to my new job in California." Linda stepped closer to the officers, her voice rising with indignation. "Don't let him manipulate you. These people are very sophisticated now. They prepare fake stories, fake documents. Look at that supposed Stanford sweatshirt, probably ordered online." Torres studied Marcus more carefully. The young man's posture was respectful, his responses clear and measured. His clothing was clean and well-fitted. Nothing about his demeanor suggested aggression or criminality. "Sir, what brings you to this event today?" Torres asked. "I was invited by Jessica Henderson," Marcus replied, pulling out his phone carefully. "We graduated together from Stanford. She wanted me to meet her parents and celebrate with other graduates." "Lies!" Linda shrieked. "Officers, he's been rehearsing this story the entire time." "Look at my live stream. I have hundreds of witnesses who saw his suspicious behavior." Jessica pushed through the crowd, her face red with anger and embarrassment. "Officers, please, this is ridiculous." "I did invite Marcus. He's my friend from college. He helped me pass calculus." Linda whirled on Jessica with vicious intensity. "Sweetie, you're obviously being manipulated. These predators target nice girls like you, specifically because you're too trusting. He probably found out about this party through social media stalking." "That's not..." Jessica started to protest, but Linda cut her off. "Officers, I have a witness." Linda pointed to a middle-aged man emerging from the crowd. "Richard! Richard, come tell them what you saw." Richard Patterson, Linda's husband, approached reluctantly. A successful attorney, he recognized the legal quicksand his wife was creating but felt trapped by spousal loyalty. "Well, I did see this individual acting somewhat out of place." Marcus felt the noose tightening. Even Jessica's protests were being twisted into evidence of his alleged manipulation. His phone buzzed again, another text from his mother. He glanced down quickly. "Hope you're having fun." "Sorry, I'm missing it." "Big announcement tonight at the city council meeting. Love you." The irony was crushing. His mother was across town making decisions that affected thousands of lives, while he stood here being treated like a criminal for attending a graduation party. "Sir, I need you to step over here," Officer Reynolds said, his hand moving to his handcuffs. "We're going to sort this out, but I need to secure the scene first." Wait, Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. Can I please call my mother? She works for the city. She can verify who I am. Linda pounced on this like a predator sensing weakness. See? Now he wants to call someone. Officers, this is classic criminal behavior. Stall for time while accomplices arrive. Her live stream had exploded to over 1,200 viewers. Comments flooded the screen. Linda, call the FBI too. Protect our neighborhoods. This is so scary, but increasingly, this seems wrong. That kid seems innocent. Linda, you've gone too far. Torres hesitated. The situation felt off to his experienced instincts, but Linda's apparent fear and multiple witnesses created pressure to act. Sir, place your hands behind your back. We'll sort this out at the station. Marcus's world began to crumble. The handcuffs felt cold against his wrists as Torres clicked them into place. Around him, phones recorded every second of his humiliation. His Stanford dreams, his Google future, his mother's pride, all reduced to this moment of public shame. This is wrong, he said quietly, but with dignity that somehow cut through the chaos. My name is Marcus Washington. I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford University. I start work at Google in 6 weeks. I was invited to this party by my friend Jessica Henderson. I have done absolutely nothing wrong except exist in a space where that woman decided I don't belong. His words carried across the silent crowd with devastating clarity. Several guests looked uncomfortable, recognizing the truth in his calm statement. But Linda's influence had created a momentum that seemed unstoppable. Officers, don't let him manipulate you with that rehearsed speech, Linda commanded, still filming. This is exactly what I warned our community about. They're getting smarter, more sophisticated. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think. His mother was in a meeting. Jessica was being dismissed as naive. The evidence of his achievements was being labeled as fake. The crowd was filming his arrest for entertainment. He opened his eyes and looked directly into Linda's camera. Whoever's watching this, please remember my name. Marcus Washington. Remember this moment. Remember what you're seeing. Then he did the only thing he could do. With his hands cuffed behind him, he managed to awkwardly pull his phone from his pocket. His thumbs moved frantically across the screen. Mom, emergency, Meadowbrook Hills Community Center. The police called on me. They think I'm a criminal. I need help now. Please. He hit send just as Officer Reynolds reached for his phone. Linda saw the text message exchange and exploded with fury. He's contacting his gang! Officers, he just alerted his criminal associates. You need to check that phone. But it was too late. The message was sent. Across town, Mayor Diane Washington was wrapping up a contentious budget meeting when her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen and felt her blood freeze. Her son. Her brilliant, accomplished, dignified son was in trouble. She stood up abruptly, cutting off the finance director mid-sentence. Gentlemen, we'll have to continue this later. I have a family emergency. Without explanation, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. Her chief of staff scrambled to follow her. Ma'am, where are you going? We have the infrastructure vote in 20 minutes. Cancel it, Mayor Washington commanded as she stepped into her official car. Drive to Meadowbrook Hills Community Center, now, and call ahead to find out what's happening there. As the town car pulled away from City Hall, sirens blazing, Mayor Washington stared at her son's text message. 22 years of protecting him, guiding him, watching him excel despite every obstacle, and now this. Someone was about to learn that messing with her child was the biggest mistake of their life. Back at the community center, Linda Patterson continued her live stream performance, basking in her moment of triumph. Her viewer count had reached 1,500, and she felt vindicated in her role as neighborhood protector. She had no idea that justice was racing toward her at 70 miles per hour in an official government vehicle. The reckoning was 3 minutes away. The black town car with government plates cut through traffic like a blade, its emergency lights flashing but sirens silent. Mayor Diane Washington sat in the passenger seat, her jaw set in a line that her staff recognized as dangerous. 22 years of motherhood, 10 years in politics, and a lifetime of fighting for justice had led to this moment. "Ma'am, we're getting reports of a disturbance at the community center," her chief of staff said, phone pressed to his ear. "Police responded to a trespassing call." One person in custody. Mayor Washington's hands clenched into fists. Her son. Her brilliant, dignified son who'd overcome every obstacle placed in his path. The boy who'd studied until midnight every night, who'd earned every opportunity through excellence, who'd made her prouder than any mother had a right to be. Someone was about to pay dearly. Back at the community center, Linda Patterson had reached the peak of her performance. Her live stream now boasted 1,800 viewers, and she was drunk on the attention and validation. Marcus stood handcuffed beside the police car, his dignity intact despite his circumstances. "Officers, I want him charged with trespassing, disturbing the peace, and making terrorist threats," Linda demanded, her phone capturing every word. "This is exactly why we need stronger laws to protect our communities from these people." Her voice dripped with false righteousness as she addressed her camera. "Everyone watching, this is what we're up against. They come into our neighborhoods, crash our celebrations, and then play victim when we defend ourselves." Sergeant Torres felt increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. The young man had been nothing but respectful. His identification was legitimate, and several party guests were now speaking up in his defense. But Linda's insistence and the presence of cameras created pressure to act. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come to the station to file a formal complaint," Torres told Linda. "Absolutely," she replied triumphantly. "I have everything documented. This video will be Exhibit A in protecting our neighborhood rights. 2,000 people have seen this criminal's true nature." Linda turned back to her camera with renewed energy. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing is why I do this work. Why do I sacrifice my time to keep our communities safe? These predators count on our politeness, our desire to avoid confrontation." Jessica Henderson pushed through the crowd one more time, tears of frustration streaming down her face. "Please, officers, this is my friend. My parents invited him. Dr. Henderson, tell them." Dr. Robert Henderson finally appeared, having been inside discussing university programs with other parents. When he saw Marcus in handcuffs, his face went pale with shock and horror. "What in God's name is happening here?" "That's the intruder's accomplice," Linda announced confidently to her camera. "Probably coached the whole family on what to say. This is how sophisticated these operations have become, folks." Dr. Henderson's expression shifted from confusion to outrage as he processed the scene. "Intruder? That's Marcus Washington. He's Jessica's study partner from Stanford. I've been hoping to meet him all afternoon." "Don't let them gaslight you, officers," Linda commanded, her voice rising to near hysteria. "This is obviously a coordinated effort. Look how prepared they all are with their stories." She spun toward her camera again, feeding off the supportive comments flooding her screen. "See this, everyone? This is exactly what I've been warning you about in our community meetings. They target nice families like the Hendersons specifically because they know these bleeding hearts will defend them." Linda's performance had reached fever pitch when she noticed several luxury cars pulling into the parking lot. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the vehicles. Too expensive for college students, too official-looking for random party guests. "Now what?" she muttered to her live stream. "Probably backup. I told you this was organized." That's when the black town car swept into the community center parking lot, followed by 2 additional government vehicles. The license plate on the lead car read Mayor 1 in bold white letters, but Linda was too focused on her performance to notice the significance. "See how many of them are showing up now?" she told her camera excitedly. "This proves everything I've been saying about organized criminal networks operating in our neighborhoods." The town car's rear door opened with authority, and Mayor Diane Washington stepped out onto the asphalt. At 50 years old, she commanded attention without effort. Her navy blue power suit was impeccable, her silver jewelry caught the afternoon light, and her presence radiated the kind of authority that came from years of making life-changing decisions for hundreds of thousands of people. She was followed by Deputy Mayor Collins and Chief of Staff Santos, both carrying tablets and looking grimly professional. The crowd instinctively parted as she approached, though most didn't immediately recognize her. Phones continued recording, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The energy in the air shifted palpably, from mob mentality to respectful attention. Mayor Washington's eyes swept the chaotic scene with the practiced assessment of someone used to crisis management. Her gaze moved from the police cars to the crowd of recording phones, from Jessica's tear-streaked face to her son standing in handcuffs with quiet dignity that made her heart swell with pride and break with fury simultaneously. She walked directly to Sergeant Torres with the confident stride of someone who'd never been denied anything she'd set her mind to. "Officer, I'm Mayor Diane Washington. You will remove those handcuffs from my son immediately." The words hit the gathering like a physical blow. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones froze in mid-recording. Even the children playing in the background seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Sergeant Torres snapped to attention, his 20 years of experience instantly recognizing the voice of ultimate authority. "Mayor Washington, we didn't realize. We were responding to a trespassing call." Linda, still live streaming to her nearly 2,000 viewers, spun toward the commotion with her phone raised high. The comments were exploding faster than she could read them, but she was too caught up in her moment of triumph to process what was happening. "I don't care who you claim to be," she shouted, her voice cracking with adrenaline and manufactured outrage. "Your son was trespassing at our private neighborhood event, threatening our families, and we have every right to defend ourselves." She turned back to her camera with renewed fury. "This is it, people. This is exactly what they do. Bring in some authority figure, probably fake, to intimidate us into backing down." The words hung in the air like toxic gas as Linda finally processed what she'd actually heard. Mayor Diane Washington. The name hit her consciousness like a sledgehammer. The woman Linda had voted for twice. The woman whose campaign signs had decorated Linda's front lawn. The woman Linda had praised repeatedly on Facebook as finally bringing law and order to our city. The woman whose policies Linda had defended in countless online arguments. Linda's phone nearly slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers as she watched her entire world begin to collapse in real time. Mayor Washington turned to face Linda directly, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who'd spent years commanding city council meetings, budget hearings, and crisis press conferences. "Mrs. Patterson, I presume. I'm Mayor Diane Washington, and that young man you just had arrested is my son Marcus." The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to absorb sound from the surrounding neighborhood. Even the traffic on the distant highway seemed to quiet in deference to the moment. Linda's live stream exploded with comments. "OMG, that's the mayor! Linda, you're so dead! Delete this now! She just called the mayor's son a criminal! This is insane! Linda, what have you done?" But Linda stood frozen, watching her carefully constructed world of neighborhood influence and social media authority crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. Mayor Washington stepped closer to Linda, her voice rising so that everyone in the crowd could hear every word clearly. "My son graduated summa cum laude from Stanford University just 2 weeks ago. He has a full-time software engineering offer from Google starting in September. He was invited to this celebration by Jessica Henderson, whom he tutored through advanced calculus for 2 years. She gestured toward Marcus, still standing in handcuffs but with his head held high. "This is the intruder you reported to the police. This is the criminal you described in your 911 call. This is the thug you've been slandering for the past 40 minutes on social media to nearly 2,000 people. Linda's phone shook violently in her hands as the full scope of her disaster became clear. Her Facebook notifications were exploding, her neighbors' text messages were pouring in, and she could see local news stations already trying to call her number. I didn't know he was your son, Linda stammered, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. If you had just said something, if someone had told me, Stop! Mayor Washington's voice cut through Linda's desperate excuses like a blade through tissue paper. The problem, Mrs. Patterson, isn't that you didn't know he was my son. The problem is that you assumed a young black man didn't belong here regardless of whose son he might be. She took another step closer, forcing Linda to look directly into her eyes. Tell me, Mrs. Patterson, what exactly made my son look suspicious to you? His Stanford sweatshirt? His graduation ceremony program? His polite conversation with other college graduates? Or was it simply the color of his skin? Deputy Mayor Collins stepped forward, his tablet displaying Linda's social media history. Mrs. Patterson, we've been monitoring your social media activity and neighborhood Facebook group for the past 6 months. This isn't your first incident of racially motivated harassment. Show me, Mayor Washington commanded. Collins began reading from his tablet. September 15th. Complaint about suspicious individuals delivering packages. October 3rd. Report about landscaping crews casing the neighborhood. November 12th. Concern about unfamiliar faces at the community mailbox. Should I continue? Richard Patterson appeared at his wife's side, his face ashen with the recognition of impending legal and professional disaster. As a successful attorney, he could see the civil rights lawsuit, the criminal charges, and the professional humiliation heading toward them like a freight train. Mayor Washington, he said carefully, surely this is just a misunderstanding that we can resolve. Mr. Patterson, Chief of Staff Santos interrupted, consulting her own tablet. Your wife has spent the last 40 minutes live streaming false accusations against the mayor's son to nearly 2,000 people. She described him as a criminal, a gang member, and a terrorist threat. None of which was true. Mayor Washington addressed the crowd and Linda's still-recording phone camera directly, knowing that her words would be replayed thousands of times across social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is a textbook example of how racism operates in affluent communities in 2024. Not burning crosses or white hoods, but assumptions, gatekeeping, and the weaponization of police against successful black Americans. She gestured toward Marcus with obvious maternal pride. My son has faced more scrutiny in his 22 years than most adults face in a lifetime. He's earned every opportunity through excellence, not privilege. He's overcome obstacles that would have broken lesser people. Today, he was invited to celebrate with friends, and Mrs. Patterson decided he was a threat for one reason only, because she couldn't imagine that a young black man belonged in her world. The mayor's voice rose with passion as she continued. This is what systemic racism looks like when it wears pearls and carries a designer purse. When it hides behind concern for property values and community safety. When it live streams hatred and calls it neighborhood watch. Linda realized her live stream had become evidence of her own destruction. Comments poured in from city council members, local business owners, community leaders, and neighbors, all expressing shock, disgust, and dismay at what they were witnessing in real time. The reckoning had only just begun. The handcuffs clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo across the entire community center. Marcus rubbed his wrists slowly, the red marks already fading. But the memory of this humiliation would last forever. Around him, the crowd watched in stunned silence as the most powerful woman in the city embraced her son. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner, Mayor Washington whispered, her voice cracking slightly with the emotion she'd kept carefully controlled during her confrontation with Linda. It's okay, Mom, Marcus replied quietly. You're here now. Sergeant Torres approached with obvious discomfort, his 20-year career suddenly feeling very precarious. Mayor Washington, we sincerely apologize for this incident. We were responding to a reported trespassing situation and— Officer Torres, the mayor interrupted, but her tone was measured rather than angry. You responded to a call as trained. The problem isn't with your response. It's with the false report that brought you here. She turned to face Linda, who stood frozen with her phone still recording but her live stream audience now witnessing her complete destruction rather than her triumph. Mrs. Patterson, you filed a false police report. You live-streamed defamatory statements about my son to thousands of people. You disrupted a peaceful community celebration with racially motivated harassment. Linda's husband, Richard, stepped forward, his attorney instincts finally overriding his shock. Mayor Washington, perhaps we could discuss this privately. No, Mr. Patterson, Chief of Staff Santos interjected, consulting her tablet. Your wife made this public when she chose to live-stream her accusations. The consequences will be equally public. Deputy Mayor Collins addressed the crowd, his voice carrying official authority. For those recording this incident, please be aware that the city will be conducting a full investigation into today's events. We encourage anyone with video evidence to contact our office. Linda finally found her voice, though it came out as a desperate whisper. Mayor Washington, please. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Can't we handle this without destroying my entire life? Mayor Washington studied Linda for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent years fighting similar battles. Mrs. Patterson, 6 months ago you posted on Facebook about wanting to clean up this neighborhood. 3 months ago you reported a black postal worker for suspicious behavior. He was delivering mail. Last month you called police on a Hispanic family visiting their relatives because they didn't look like they belonged here. The crowd murmured as these revelations sank in. Several neighbors looked uncomfortable, recognizing incidents they'd witnessed or heard about but hadn't connected. My son isn't your first victim, Mrs. Patterson. He's just the first one whose mother has the power to hold you accountable. Jessica Henderson pushed through the crowd, her face red with anger and shame. Marcus, I am so incredibly sorry. I should have stood up to her immediately. I should have— Jessica, Marcus interrupted gently. You tried. You invited me because you saw me as a friend, not as a color. That means everything. Dr. Henderson finally reached the center of the commotion, his face pale with horror at what had transpired at his daughter's celebration. Mayor Washington, I cannot express how mortified we are. Marcus has been nothing but respectful and helpful to our family. Dr. Henderson, you and your family bear no responsibility for this woman's actions, the mayor replied firmly. Linda's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, missed calls from neighbors, frantic texts from friends, and social media alerts she was too afraid to check. Her Facebook group, Meadowbrook Community Watch, was in complete chaos, with members either defending her actions or denouncing them in increasingly heated exchanges. Local news vans began pulling into the parking lot, drawn by social media reports of the mayor confronting a racist resident at a community event. Channel 7's investigative reporter jumped out of the first van, camera crew close behind. Mayor Washington, the reporter called out. Can you comment on the situation here? Mayor Washington looked at Linda one final time before addressing the media. Today, my son, a Stanford graduate starting work at Google next month, was falsely accused of criminal behavior while attending a friend's graduation party. The incident was live-streamed by Mrs. Patterson to nearly 2,000 viewers, spreading defamatory lies about a young man whose only crime was being black in a space where someone decided he didn't belong. The reporter's questions came rapid-fire, but Mayor Washington maintained her composure. This incident highlights the urgent need for accountability when false police reports are filed based on racial bias. The city attorney will be reviewing all aspects of today's events for potential criminal charges. Linda realized the scope of her destruction was expanding beyond anything she could have imagined. Her husband's law practice would suffer. Her social standing was obliterated. Her live stream had created permanent evidence of her bigotry that would follow her forever. Please, she whispered to Mayor Washington, what can I do to make this right? The mayor considered the question seriously. Mrs. Patterson, apologies are necessary but insufficient. You have influence in this community. You used it to spread hatred and fear. Now you can use it to promote understanding and change. Chief of Staff Santos stepped forward with specific recommendations. Community service with youth organizations serving underprivileged students. Implicit bias training. Public acknowledgement of the harm caused by false police reports based on racial profiling. And, Mayor Washington added, a formal apology to my son, not for the cameras or social media, but because you owe him that basic human dignity. Linda nodded numbly, realizing she had no choice but to accept these terms or face criminal prosecution and civil lawsuits that would destroy her family completely. Marcus watched this exchange with remarkable composure for someone who'd been publicly humiliated and falsely arrested. When Linda finally approached him directly, he looked her in the eyes without flinching. Marcus, she said, her voice barely audible, I am deeply sorry for what I put you through today. My actions were wrong, hurtful, and based on prejudices I didn't even realize I had. You didn't deserve any of this. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus replied with grace that silenced the entire crowd, I accept your apology. But this can't happen to anyone else. Other young men who look like me might not have my advantages, my education, or my mother's position. They deserve the same dignity and presumption of innocence that you would give anyone else. The local news cameras captured every word, and within hours, Marcus's dignified response would be shared millions of times across social media platforms as an example of grace under pressure. Mayor Washington felt pride swell in her chest as she watched her son handle the situation with more maturity than many adults could manage. The immediate crisis was resolving, but the real work, changing hearts, minds, and systems, was just beginning. 6 months later, the Meadowbrook Hills Community Center buzzed with different energy entirely. The same pavilion that had witnessed Marcus Washington's public humiliation now hosted the first annual Unity Celebration, a community event focused on bringing together residents from all backgrounds. Marcus stood at a podium, no longer the frightened college graduate who'd been handcuffed for existing while black. Now he was a confident Google software engineer, home for the holidays, sharing his story with a packed audience that included city officials, community leaders, and dozens of young people who saw him as proof that dignity and perseverance could overcome hatred. That day changed everything, he told the crowd, his voice steady and strong. Not just for me, but for this entire community. What started as one woman's prejudice became a catalyst for real change. In the back of the room, Linda Patterson sat quietly, her designer clothes replaced by the simple uniform of someone who'd spent the morning volunteering at the inner-city youth center where she now worked 3 days a week. The woman who'd once live-streamed hatred now dedicated her time to mentoring underprivileged teenagers, many of whom looked exactly like the young man she'd once called a criminal. The transformation hadn't been easy. Linda had lost most of her social circle, faced months of public scrutiny, and watched her husband's law practice struggle as clients distanced themselves from the scandal. But through court-mandated community service and voluntary therapy sessions, she'd begun to understand the deep-seated biases that had driven her actions that day. I want to acknowledge someone in our audience, Marcus continued, his eyes finding Linda in the crowd. Mrs. Patterson, would you please stand? Linda hesitated, her face flushing with embarrassment as heads turned toward her. Slowly she stood, waiting for the condemnation she still believed she deserved. 6 months ago, Mrs. Patterson made a terrible mistake that hurt me and revealed ugly truths about assumptions we make based on appearance, Marcus said. But since then, she's done something remarkable. She's chosen to learn and grow rather than double down on hatred. She's volunteered hundreds of hours with young people who need advocates. She's become living proof that people can change when they're willing to confront their own prejudices. The applause was hesitant at first, then grew stronger as the audience recognized the courage it took for both Marcus to offer Grace and Linda to accept accountability. Mayor Washington watched from the front row, her heart swelling with pride at her son's maturity and wisdom. The incident that had begun as every parent's nightmare had become a masterclass in turning pain into purpose. The policy changes that followed had been swift and comprehensive. The Washington Protocol now required police departments to document the race of both 911 callers and subjects in potential bias incidents. False police reports based on racial profiling carried mandatory penalties. Community organizations received funding for implicit bias training. But the real change had been cultural. Meadowbrook Hills had become a model community for addressing racism not by ignoring it, but by confronting it directly and working together towards something better. Jessica Henderson, now working as a civil engineer, had organized the Unity celebration as her way of ensuring the lessons learned that day weren't forgotten. "Marcus showed us what grace looks like," she told the audience during her opening remarks. "But all of us had a choice that day, to be bystanders filming for entertainment or to be allies standing up for what's right." The event featured workshops on recognizing unconscious bias, panels on building inclusive communities, and mentorship programs pairing established residents with newcomers regardless of background. What had once been a homogeneous neighborhood was actively working to become genuinely welcoming. As the evening concluded, Marcus issued a challenge that resonated far beyond Meadowbrook Hills. The next time you see someone being treated differently because of how they look, where they come from, or what you assume about them, you have a choice. Will you be the person filming for social media entertainment? Will you be the silent bystander who lets injustice happen? Or will you be the person who speaks up even when it's uncomfortable? His words were captured on dozens of phones, but this time the recording served a different purpose, spreading a message of hope and accountability rather than hatred and division. The story of Marcus Washington and Linda Patterson has been viewed millions of times across social media platforms, becoming a case study in business schools, law enforcement academies, and diversity training programs nationwide. But its most important impact was local, proving that communities could choose healing over hatred when confronted with their own biases. As the crowd dispersed into the warm evening air, Marcus and Linda found themselves face to face one final time. Without words, she extended her hand, and he shook it firmly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for giving me the chance to become better than I was." "Thank you," he replied, "for taking that chance." Before you scroll past this story, ask yourself, what assumptions do you make about who belongs in your spaces? When you see someone being treated unfairly, what role will you choose to play? Share this story if you believe everyone deserves dignity regardless of their skin color. Comment below with your commitment to being an ally when it matters most. And remember, change doesn't happen when we stay comfortable. It happens when we find the courage to stand up, speak out, and choose justice over silence. The next Marcus Washington might be counting on your courage. Don't let them down.